back with Suarez. Always a great guest. Honored to have him here. Embassy protector, community organizer. Always great to have him. We attempted to do a interview. Was it Tuesday? I'm not sure. Earlier this week when I was on the road, we had quite a bit of technical difficulties. It did not go on the record. So we're going to attempt to have a very similar conversation. Sorry if this is a repeat for some of my viewers. How are you tonight, Alex?
I'm doing okay considering.
I hear you. All right, I guess we'll get right into it. People can tell by the name, either on Facebook or YouTube. This is on cancel culture. You recently had your Facebook shut down. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can't claim to know who was responsible for shutting down my Facebook profile, but I can get into the possibilities and what it has to do with activists and the censorship and how we've been silenced on social media in general lately during this crisis. Um, I had a Facebook profile for 10 years, built a network, countless photos that I was not the ones that I was not able to recover on Google Photos, countless videos, ones I weren't able to upload, countless contacts, never be able to reach a lot of people ever again. Because I have a very limited following on Twitter. I was more focused on Facebook. All of that taking down, and then when I asked for a review, they wouldn't tell me what post supposedly violated their community standards. And they said that they'd have to reinstate me. Now, there's another journalist more known than me named Ford Fisher, who I had met some months ago in DC, who was offering assistance on our film that we were working on. And he also recently, a few days after me, had his Facebook taken down. However, he has quite a following. I was never interested in building a following. I was interested in promoting the cause. But, he has his way of journalism and it worked for him because he was reinstated to Facebook soon after, I believe the next day, after made a fuss about it and put it out on Twitter. And of course, I expressed my solidarity for him at that time. But, when it comes to me, the Facebook's still down. It's been down since late August. um, and so unfortunately, a lot of people might think that I've blocked them for whatever reason. But yeah, the page is completely down. It's not a limited takedown where I have access to Messenger. It's total takedown, and it's even blacklist takedown because I tried to put my name with an alternative profile just to try to find some people that I had lost in my network, and that was taken down soon after. Um, Also, I've been blacklisted as a political organizer here locally in Jacksonville. I'm not allowed to get paid to politically organize, and I was never politically organizing for money, anyways. But of course, I can't even be given gas money now,
Right,
according to all the people that
so
look at this blacklist. Um, they've ostracized me in every way possible, and then I had a crushing blow um, in late August with the death of a comrade of mine that I've known for 10 years, uh, Jack Lieberman. And then a week later, one of the main protagonists of my film that I've been working on, that you've interviewed me about, Dust, Kevin Z's, passed away suddenly. Kevin, pretty much worked himself to death. We'll get into him later, but he died of a sudden heart attack, and Jack had died of COVID. He'd been fighting it for 2 months. He was 70, and Kevin was only 64. But we're in crazy times right now, times of censorship. I was thrown out of my internship at my college for writing an article that was published and approved online, and then it was taken down. And then when I just questioned why they were doing something like that, I was removed entirely from the internship and lost those college credits. This is the times that we're living in. People are being taken down, whether it's at their internships writing for a paper, with an article that may be controversial, whether it's trying to express themselves freely on Facebook, and trying to work with people, then they die or you're ostracized. We're just in crazy times, and it's on us revolutionaries, us true journalists like Assange and his ongoing trial. We need to support him. We need to support each other. These are crazy times.
wow, that's that is a lot. Um, you just went over. So how many years was your account on Facebook?
Actually, more than 10 years, 11 years. And a lot of the
11
first
years.
people I ever added, because I was always interested in activism, people that I met later on were people like Jack, like Kevin, like Medea Benjamin. She's still around, thank God. But yeah, these people I've been in touch with 11 years, a lot of them. And I've lost a lot of those contacts. I still have some of them on WhatsApp, on Twitter. But yeah, we're talking about nearly 5,000 friends, because 5,000 is the limit, all gone now. People from all over the world, and they don't know how to get in touch with me. A lot of them don't know how to find me on Twitter. I don't have their phone number. I can't, call them on WhatsApp. But yeah, people from all over the world now, it's gone. So people say, "Oh, you're taking off Facebook, no big deal." It's crushing. It's damaging. But I'm a fighter, and I have to rebuild.
Right on. So, an intern getting kicked out of an intern or them eliminating that is a labor issue. There's a labor dispute because internship, although unpaid labor, leads to more labor opportunities down the road. Did they give you a reason for
That's
terminating
the
your
thing.
intern?
The reason that they gave was just as vague as Facebook's reason. So Facebook said, we're not going to say what community standard was violated, just that you violated it. First off, the paper said the reason why we took down your article that we approved, which was exposing the establishment of Montreal's other things with facts, with cited work, that the editors approved. Of course, the advisor, Washington Schultz surrogate, Maureen Baker, so she put a stop to all of that. And also, she told me in a meeting when she interrogated me about the article after it was published, there's no students from District 5 here. Now, District 5, where I used to live in Jacksonville, is predominantly African American and working class and poor. And many of the areas there are unsafe. I had to move from the area, but there's very good people there. I have very good neighbors. I'm working class. I'm in favor of the working class worldwide as a Marxist. So when she told me there's nobody that goes to UNF that's from District 5, why did you article about the candidate from District 5? Why mention Washington Schultz? Just stupid questions like that. Like, if I had an agenda, what's my agenda? I said, I have no hidden agenda. She said, why you're here? For truth. Oh, journalists are not for truth. She actually said that. And I said, excuse me, I lived in District 5. But basically what she was saying is she can't imagine working class students could become a graduate student for their master's like I did. She can't imagine people of color that are working class from these neighborhoods being able to attend UNF, because she's so classist and racist. And the sad thing is, the editor-in-chief, Heidi Ortiz, is a Latina. And the managing editor who wrote me saying that my article was going to be taken down is an African-American, Zach Yearwood. And so, they might try to suspend me over exposing their names, so be it, because this is how they acted. These are the facts. The only reason they gave for taking down my article is that they said it wasn't a good fit for Spinnaker. And the next day I'm called by Maureen Baker before we're going to meet with the head of the communications department to try to work things out. And like a couple hours before the meeting, and she calls me and she says, yeah, I don't think you're a good fit for Spinnaker. We're not going to have this meeting. You're out. So these are very vague reasons given because of censorship. If it wasn't censorship, there would have been a strong reason. If I had threatened members of the staff, if I had lied in the article and was a proven lie, everything in the article was factual. That's why they couldn't cite a single part of the article as a reason why I was taken down or a reason why I was thrown out of the internship. And yes, it wasn't paid, but it's 3 college credits, Dust. That can affect my financial aid later on. I'm a working class student. I can't just pay for my classes out of pocket. So can I afford a fancy attorney? No. I got tear gassed here. Nobody wants to take my legal case. If you don't have money in hand or the connections, because I'm new to this community, I have some connections I built, but not a lot. If you don't have money or connections, you can have an injustice done to you and to your comrades, and nothing will be done about it. And what gives me solace is knowing there's so many other journalists like me throughout the country that have been censored. And I am so upset, Dust. Ever since I was a little child, I think I was about 12 years old, I wrote my first article in a major newspaper. Chomsky, who's one of my heroes who I interviewed back in the day, he was about the same age when he wrote his first article in a newspaper about the Spanish Civil War. But yeah, I was about 12 years old. I wrote an article about bullying in the school, interviewed students. So even before I was 12, by the way, I wanted to be a journalist. So as a little kid, I only wanted to do was write books. And I did depictions of Robin Hood and learned about the Latin Robin Hood, Che, and all of that to my teenage years. But this is something my entire life I wanted to do. I wanted to be a leader in journalism, but a journalist like Assange, a journalism with integrity, for transparency. And for the first time in my life, Dust, they've pushed me so much over the edge that I'm seriously considering changing my major next year to history instead, and to teach the working class students in the community college with my master's, like Howard Zinn did, the real history of the United States and of the world through a working class perspective, through a perspective of the oppressed, the black and brown of the world, who are the majority. And so when I spoke out after getting tear gassed in the local media, they wouldn't show it. RT showed it, right? The evil Russian menace did an interview with me, and it came out. When I say, evil Russian menace, I'm being sarcastic, of course. Um, but nobody wanted to take up the case. Nobody wanted to reveal it in the local press. And I spoke on St. Augustine about it in a speech. After that, I was invited to give more speeches. So when you're a radical, and let's look at the origin of the word radical, right? By the way, I'm seeing my image frozen. You can still hear me or see me?
Your image is a bit pixelated, but the audio is coming through clear. And
Okay. And so the origin of the word radical, right, which is supposed to be a bad thing, like an extremist, it doesn't actually mean extreme. So in Latin, the word radic means root. So whoever's getting to the root cause or trying to find a solution for every issue is a radical thinker. How's that a bad thing? How's that turn into a negative connotation? So suddenly, when you're radical and you're actually getting to the root cause of things and not talking about BS and mediocre things, uh, then you're ostracized. Oh, he can't speak out for progressives. He can't do this. He can't do that. And unfortunately, I'm in a very conservative part of Florida right now, even more conservative than when I lived down at Boca Raton when I was going for my bachelor's. And a lot of these conservatives are Democrats, like Wasserman Schultz. I exposed in my article. They didn't like that. And, to be honest here, the Republican Party is just a neo-Nazi fascist party at this point. That's the far right. That's just dominated by the far right. That's indisputable at this point. But the Democrats are just moderate Republicans. They don't even hide it anymore. They brought John Kasich to the DNC, and then they didn't bring Tulsi, right? Even though she was a Democrat presidential candidate with delegates who even endorsed Biden, she couldn't go to the DNC. But John Kasich had more presidents, right? Or they would bring to the DNC a Latina actress, I don't even know her name, to speak for like an hour, and then AOC got 30 seconds or 40 seconds, whatever it was. Um, they did that so they say, oh, you see, we're not sexist and racist against Latinas. We'll bring an actress who has no political experience to speak for an hour, and then we'll shut up AOC, or Ocasio-Cortez. This is the times that we're living, man, and we need alternative voices out there in the media, and we need real history taught to the people. History like the three Seminole Wars that were fought down here in Florida through red and black unity. They defeated the U.S. Army 3 times in a row. They don't teach you that history. They want to cover that up. But Howard Zinn taught in a university in the South, and he was thrown out of that university, and then he ended up teaching at BU, Boston University, and became good friends with Chomsky's and others. But yeah, I mean, it's like my life's destined for me to either be a controversial professor, a controversial journalist, maybe both. I can always fall back on my bachelor's, maybe work in a newsroom, and then work as a professor at a community college with a master's. I don't want to go to PhD. I would go deeply in debt. That's another thing. In countries like Cuba and in Europe, you could go to PhD and not have a dime of debt. But because of the imperialist capitalist system that we have here, we lack opportunity, we lack freedoms in the so-called greatest democracy of the world, which you and I know is a joke.
wow, that's you're great. When you get going, you put it all out there, man. A lot of great points made there. The root of radical, the Seminole Wars, all the way from modern day cancel culture. Maybe we can break down.
Oh yeah, let me get into cancel culture. Let me get into cancel culture. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Or you want to ask me something else first?
Um, go for it. Go for it, man.
So I say jokingly, cancer culture, right? Now, I'm not trying to say that every single person that really believes that cancel culture is a good thing is trying to be a cancer for the left. I'm saying they're unwittingly becoming tools of the imperialist and the bourgeoisie to divide us and then be cancerous to the left. What do I mean by that? There's a term that's used here or there called left cannibalism, right? Where we eat our own. One of my theories is why the right is so united and the left is so divided is the left tend to be more intelligent. So we question things. The right are so dumb and brute, they just go along. And that's actually why police for the past 20 plus years, and I've interviewed a police captain about this, have had by law to only hire officers with low IQs, and they have to be insensitive. What's the logic in that, right? But yes, you will not question orders. You will go on with the contrary to the Nuremberg principles, like the Nazis said. You got to go along with those orders when you don't use your intellect and your conscience. And therefore, the left becomes divided. And what happens? You have groups like cancel culture, and they go after more than public figures. You know that. They've gone after me. They've gone after several others. And I'm not necessarily blaming them for being taken down on Facebook. I don't know who made the report. I don't know exactly what happened. It could have even been Atlantic Council. That's a NATO lobby group that advises Zuckerberg and the board of Facebook. I'm an anti-imperialist. I'm very vocal against NATO. And one of my last posts was being critical of NATO and what they're doing in Belarus. And so it could have been them. I don't know. It could have been a combination of factors. I have my share of enemies. But they say, if you want to make an omelet, you have to crack a few eggs. So let's get into cancel culture. My understanding of cancel culture is they attack anyone who talks about social class in the context of fighting racism, and they call them class reductionists. Now, class reductionists might as well be a term invented by the CIA, because apparently, people on Facebook were attacking BLM, right, Black Lives Matter, and saying, "Oh, they're a bunch of radical Marxists." And you know what I said in response, right, to us? I said, "I wish they were." Which isn't to say that there's no Marxists within the BLM movement. We should get behind the BLM movement and being constructively critical of them. But certainly anybody with a basic understanding of Marxism knows that the goal, or should at least be, of every Marxist for there to be a classless society. What does that mean? That means true equality comes about. Does that mean every individual overnight will have racism erased? No. But at the institutional level, like I witnessed in Cuba, where I didn't see the same racial tensions you see here in the United States, you can start to end all forms of discrimination, whether sexism, racism, etc. But that can only come about when a classless society, we strive towards a revolutionary society that's classless. It can't be done overnight. So those that say, "Oh, you can't talk about social class. You can only focus on racism, or you're class reductionist. And if you're a class reductionist, we're going to have you thrown out of the university. We're going to cancel your events. We're going to form cancel culture." When they act like that, they're acting cancerous. And a lot of them are actually white bourgeois academic professors that claim to be Marxists. And they don't understand that Marxism has to come into the streets. It's like those professors that say, "Me as a Latino," and they don't speak a word of Spanish. They claim I speak a sexist language, which is not true. There's many gender neutral words in Spanish. But they claim me as a Latino, my language is sexist. Therefore, I'm forced to say Latinx. It used to be, and I supported the idea, especially if I heard it from the transgender Latin community. I hadn't, but if I did, I would support it. And I have to look into that. But at first, when you said Latinx, it only meant transgender people within the Latin community, right? Now they're saying every single person in the Latin community has to be referred to as Latinx. And they're trying to impose that on us, and to be politically correct. And it's important to be politically correct at times. I never say illegal alien, for example. That's just dehumanizing. They're undocumented. But they try to impose this on the Latin community, and that's an example of bourgeois academics based off ignorance, actually, because a lot of them don't understand Spanish. If they did, they know we have many gender neutral words. And if you want to attack anything, attack the English language, was inherently racist, which makes us even racist at a subconscious level against our own skin color. Why is that? I'll give you an example. The word blackmail in Spanish or French is chantage or chantaje, as they would say in Spanish. Nothing to do with the color, but everything in the English dictionary that has the word black is negative, is evil. And so why don't they talk about the racism in the English language? No, they just want to go after Latinos and force us to call yourself Latinx. So some people might think it's silly looking in from the outside. Oh, use your name this way, but it is very deeply insulting, actually, the way that they try to impose that on us and how we refer to ourselves. So those same bourgeois academics are coming out and saying, "Oh, we can't have a debate. We can't open discussion because you can't be class reductionist. Then you're being racist." That's just ridiculous. You have incredible African-American progressive intellectuals that want to speak about social class. And some of them are even backed up by people as respected as Cornel West. And they're being ostracized by the DSA and other groups. And the New York Times came out with a good article about this. It is the bourgeois press, but they actually were right on this one, that the way that these intellectuals are being treated, being ostracized and canceling events just because they want to have a debate about social class is ridiculous. Does that mean we can progress as a democracy, that you're going to silence free speech in that manner? And I'm not talking about him going and inciting violence. This was a professor just wanted to go talk about social class. Oh, no, you're reductionist. Come on. The way that you solve the problem, you get to the root cause of discrimination and in the forms of sexism, racism primarily, is through advocating a classless society. The ruling class is using gender and racism and identity politics to divide us.
Wow,
that's what the elites are doing in both parties.
It's like rapid fire, man. You laid it out there. I didn't know that. I know I didn't know that about Latinx, the word. I know it's being pushed by these liberal academics of
Less
various
than 1%
class
of the
racial.
Latin community even heard of the word before, by the way. In the
I
United
know.
States, especially in Miami, where they don't speak English,
Mhm.
they would say Latinx, ¿qué es eso? They would say, ¿qué es eso? That means, what is that? You know?
Yeah, it makes sense. I know that Comrade Matt Cedillo is being brutally attacked for trying to maintain the word Chicano, which has like vast amount of history and is common in the communities in Southwest
When
and
Maduro
even
gives a
here. And
speech
then,
to us, when
uh-huh.
Maduro gives a speech, the first thing he says is, compañeros, compañeras. So in this very first words that comes out of his mouth is my comrades. And when he says mis compañeros, compañeras, he's immediately addressing both the men and the women. And then there's a word like gente or gente in French, which is people. That's a gender neutral word. The way these academics bring it out, they're trying to say like every single word in Spanish is male. No, there's actually female dominated words. Like for vessels or ships, they're always given feminine words. So what they're saying is just it's a form to try to limit the free speech of Latinos, in particular working class Latinos that can't get into these fancy universities.
We just got a comment from Itzla X. Bet Norton talked about how Latinx is very foreign to Latin America.
Very what?
Which would very foreign to Latin America. The term
It is.
Latinx is very foreign. You
It's
said
even
KSA.
foreign to Latin Americans in the United States.
uh, yeah, that's crazy. This group of people, get to decide. Um, well, so let's back it up for a moment. You hinted at it, but from my understanding, you said you were blacklisted from a lot of the organizing you were doing, and you hinted that it was because you mentioned police brutality. Like I'm a little confused. Can you go in a little bit more on
No, what
that?
I was saying is when I was invited to come on Russia Today International, which
Uh huh.
comrades from all over the world saw, I got pictures sent to me on Facebook from Europe of me on the TV screen. Like thousands of people saw it. And so First Coast News, which is a local news outlet, interviewed me after our tear gas. They came up to me. I didn't go up to them. They came up to me after I gave my speech. They set up an interview with me, and it never got released. And the RT interview was live, and it got released to the world soon after. And what I'm trying to say is, a lot of these conservative Democrats hate Russia, and they would prefer to silence me, a Latino, than let me speak out in local media or let me give a speech again here locally. And then they ostracize me and throw me out as political organizer altogether. Now, again, I don't know who did the blacklist, but I have from a very credible source, I would not be revealing this publicly if not, that I have been blacklisted. And it makes sense because I had virtual job offers to get cash for gas money and expenses to go and organize for progressives. I only support progressives, I don't take corporate money. And then suddenly it got canceled, right? I got a call like we can't do it. And so my friend looked into it, somebody that's credible. I can't say who, but this credible source. And they said, I know for certain you've been blacklisted from all of Northeast Florida. And so I'm literally losing wages over it, but I can't afford an attorney. There's nothing really I can do about it. But this is what they do. They go below the belt. This is probably somebody from cancel culture. I can tell you that. I don't know about who took me down on Facebook, but I do know that cancel culture was involved with me being blacklisted. That is a fact.
All right. So, bring it back again. You also mentioned um, that they got rid of the internship. They didn't. They said you were a bad fit. Can you tell us a little more about the paper you wrote? I know it's not
Sure.
published, or maybe our
It's
viewers know.
interesting because it's interesting, Dust, because the first article that I wrote for the paper is still up there. And that was being critical of Trump and how he was kind of using deep state as a cop out, right? But as soon as I was critical of the centrist Democrats, then I'm ostracized, right? So they don't mind when you're attacking Trump. And I'm no fan of Trump or Trumpism. But when I was trying to go after the same elites in the Democratic Party, then I was thrown out. So that's the hypocrisy that we're living in when it comes to the media.
So what were the points? You said Schultz, Washington. What were the points you made
Yeah,
that?
the original articles in my blog, I can send it to you. I sent you my recent blog about Kevin. I can send you my other post about showing the original article and giving commentary in the beginning, giving it context and explaining how I was ostracized as a result of being released and then it being taken down. Um, But in the article, it talks about a very good candidate who lost the primary. He did pretty well in the three-way race, but he lost. His name's Dr. Albert Chester. He's a pharmacist. He's a progressive. He's for Medicare for all. He's for cancellation of student debt. He's for free education to PhD. So he's very progressive from being from this area, African-American working class background, from working class community. So, you know, I shined a light on his campaign. I talked about how Al Lawson was one of 3 Democrats who's an ALEC alumni, which is a very conservative lobby. So he's a Democrat from ALEC alumni, just like Wasserman Schultz, who endorsed him, and which he shared on social media, Al Lawson. So I exposed Al Lawson, just stating facts, stating a little bit about WikiLeaks and how Wasserman Schultz had to step down from the DNC because of WikiLeaks revelations, rigging against Bernie, stuff like that. Stuff that's controversial, but the statement of fact, without my opinion in it, backing it up with like an ABC article, citing stories, even from the mainstream media, so-called. And so talking about Chester and you know, and the importance of the youth voting next time, because a lot of the youth didn't turn up. You had older African-American people that are conservative, that like Sal Lawson, they don't care that he was part of ALEC. And so Chester lost, and the LJ was the spoiler, you could say. She was basically sent there by Lawson to divide the votes. I didn't say that, but I said that she had been accused of being a spoiler candidate. Explain what a spoiler candidate is, that they're usually hired by the incumbent. Part of that was taken out, and I accepted it. And I also was fair. I said she denies that. She denies being a spoiler. But yeah, I was talking about the race, and then Maureen Baker, who goes by Mo, over at the advisor over at the Spinnaker, the so-called student-run paper, she's like, "Oh, this can't be up there. This doesn't make us look good. How can you say Wasserman Schultz conservative? Blah blah blah. I never even heard of ALEC," she said. So this lady's supposed to be an expert in politics as a journalist, and she never even heard of ALEC. And so she's basically in denial that Wasserman Schultz was ever part of ALEC, even though it was a statement of fact that had already been revealed prior to that. So, you know, they don't want things controversial like that, even when the editor-in-chief, Heidi, said it was fantastic. And she's on Google Docs with me and the other editors, editing up till the end. It's approved, it's put online, and then it's taken down. And did I make a huge scene? No. I just said, I think this is censorship. And she says, okay, we need to have a meeting tomorrow. And then the meeting's canceled, and I'm told that I'm out of the internship. This is how they censor people, and they get away with it. It's happening throughout the country. And in the college papers, you're supposed to have more leeway, more free speech than when you enter the mainstream or the corporate media world. But no, there's censorship there too. And people like Maureen, all they're assuring by being like a surrogate for Wasserman Schultz, is that Trump is going to be reelected. Because as long as the youth don't know about these candidates, don't know about the importance of backing progressives, Trump's going to keep being reelected, and they're not going to show up to vote. Or conservative Democrats are going to keep being elected and stay in power with the establishment. That's just the reality. If there's not enough media that exposes the establishment, that's where we're going to be, in tyranny, brother, in tyranny. And so one of my favorite George Orwell quotes is, he said that publishing something, no, he said printing something someone else does not want printed is journalism. Everything else is public relations. People like Maureen Baker, she's a PR agent for the establishment. That is not journalism. She tried to say I'm not a real journalist. But they got me to a point now where I'm seriously considering changing my major. Again, I can always fall back on my bachelor's in communications and media, but I'm just sick of it, man. I'm sick of the censorship, whether it's on social media, whether it's when you're trying to express yourself in college paper and say certain truths. Those truths are not convenient to them. Another great Orwell quote, and I'm not the biggest Orwell fan, but he said a lot of wise things. You know, he said, in a world of universal deceit, speaking the truth is a revolutionary act. Right? So speaking truth shouldn't, or being for truth shouldn't have to be revolutionary, but it is, because of the state of affairs that we're in with the media and the amount of deceit. The media is supposed to hold the government's feet to the fire. That was in the Constitution. It's the only profession mentioned in the Constitution, constitutionally protected. But journalists are forced to self-censor or be thrown out. That's the reality. And I'll give you another example. Larry King, I'm not saying I'm the biggest supporter of Russia Today, but they do a lot of good, especially Russia Today America, and how they bring in American journalists that were thrown out. So Larry King was thrown out of CNN. What did he do? He went and joined RT, and they're criticizing him for joining RT. Guess what? He has more free speech now than he ever did in his entire career at CNN in the corporate world. And so why is RT so bad, right? At least they gave me a voice when I was tear gassed. They were the only media outlet that would. I'm saying major media outlet, because you're one of the people who interviewed me, of course. This is our third interview together. I don't remember if I talked to you about the tear gassing, but, you know, except for alternative journalists like you and me, RT was the only major network that sought me out, that interviewed me to expose the tear gassing and the violation of international law. And something that I didn't say in the RT interview, which I found out later, under U.S. law, you could not use tear gas against enemy combatants, but you can use tear gas against American citizens. What does that say? That says that the American government considers us more an enemy than enemy combatants. Isn't there something wrong with that, Dust? And they did it like in 70 plus cities throughout the United States, tear gassing us, and we were peaceful. And I have the video to prove it. But nobody wants to take up the case. Nobody wants to talk about it in the media. And people say, oh, you're making it about you. It's not about me. It's about the cause. But if these injustices are continue to be permitted, we're going to be in a tyranny worse than Trump, brother. Worse than Trump.
Wow. There's a lot there. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about Julian Assange. I know he had the trial this week.
Yeah, I've been in touch with his mother through Twitter, Christine Assange, wonderful lady, very courageous, done everything she could to help her son. Like I even donated money, small amount, but what I could to his legal defense. Kevin Zees was a big fighter for Assange. That was one of the last things he was doing before he died. He was looking at the Assange case and how to help because he came from a legal background, activist lawyer. And so if Assange is extradited to the United States, he could die soon after. But something else that could happen if Trump loses, and one of Assange's attorney brought this up, if Trump loses just to stick it to the Democrats, not out of humanitarian purposes, he could pardon both Snowden and Assange. That would really piss off the Democrats. And legally, there's nothing much they could do if he did pardon them. So that's no reason to vote Trump out. But yeah, I mean, I really think that whistleblowers and journalists like Assange, like Snowden, should be pardoned. They're heroes. They've exposed war crimes. They fought for transparency, which is all journalists should be for. So definitely people should pay attention to the Assange case that's barely getting in the coverage in the bourgeois press. And it should, because it affects journalism overall. Then you can't publish what a source has told you who's a whistleblower. Basically, they're legalizing the act of journalism by going after Assange. Even though he's not an American citizen, it has implications for all the media, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these media outlets, even from the mainstream, that had revealed the stories that Assange and WikiLeaks had brought about through their whistleblowers. Now that's all going to be illegalized if they're able to convict Assange. And he hasn't been convicted of a single thing. Not even the allegation in Sweden was he convicted of. And he's being treated as a terrorist, as a worst criminal in the dungeon in the midst of COVID. And it's affecting his health. But he's continuing on. He's fighting. I mean, if someone cannot admire this, I don't know what they can admire,
Right on. Just to add to that, like, I don't know, they're demonizing him. I think they do these displays, like put him behind a glass cage, have people to make him look like a criminal. Like when working people can't afford a lawyer.
They took away his shaving razors, Dust.
Yeah.
They took away his razors at the embassy. So when they took him out, he would have a big beard to make him look like a bum. And as soon as he got into the prison, he ordered razors so he could shave and cut his beard in a correct way. But they did all these things to make him look like a monster,
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what they do to working people. Like if you can't afford bail, you have to appear in your orange suit. So demonize, and there's a lot of protocols, even though it's in England, which has a little bit, at least reputation, just better justices in the United States.
Well, what's funny? So Galloway, who I've been in touch with before, George Galloway, very big supporter of Assange, former member of Parliament. Galloway in the beginning said, "I'm glad it's going through the British courts, not the American courts, because it's going to be fair." Now he's more critical than anybody. They're saying how that this court is a kangaroo court for the U.S. empire. So even proponents of the British justice system before that were denial that said, well, it's going to be fair. Now they're saying this is the most unfair thing they ever seen, because this is not a normal British court system right now. It's a kangaroo court on behalf of Washington to persecute a journalist under the guise of legality. It's persecution. It's not prosecution.
Wow, that really exposes that Europe is really a part of the imperialist bloc.
That's why you need to abolish NATO. Don't defund NATO, abolish NATO, because NATO assures that Europe acts as the vassal states of the United States. Europe has less autonomy in its foreign policy than Latin America today.
Wow, profound statement. We're getting in past the 30-minute
Let me
mark.
just ask you one something real quick. If Evo Morales had fled to France, if Evo Morales had fled to Great Britain when he escaped the fascist coup in Bolivia, what would have happened? Within 2 or 3 weeks, he would have been sent back to Bolivia on an American plane. Argentina and Mexico stood up. What does that mean? That means Argentina and Mexico today have a more independent foreign policy than Europe does.
Wow, it's absolutely, and AMLO is doing good things as far as loans for the people, ending corruption, inviting. I guess there isn't any anti neoliberal governments really in Europe. I mean, it's you're spot on. So we're getting past the 30-minute mark. You mentioned earlier that your friend and comrade Kevin Ziest passed away recently. You worked with him. You were a comrade with him as an embassy protector. Can you tell us a little bit more of your work with him?
So I know basically, I could write a biography of Kevin if I wanted to. I'm a writer. I basically know about all the things he was involved with, especially the Green Party, because I was a Green for a while as well, through his entire life. But I would like to think the thing that Kevin was most proud of was standing up for the Venezuelan people by protecting that embassy and fighting it out in court and winning against all odds. They had a stacked jury, Dust, a stacked jury that admitted they worked for the FBI and the CIA, and they couldn't change those jurors. And two held out. There was a mistrial because two of them could not get clarification from the biased judge, who was actually the judge who passed the Patriot Act. That was before she was a federal judge. She was appointed by Obama. But again, both parties, they get establishment judges like that. And so she did everything she could to rig it and to withhold and have the defense withhold evidence. I was witness to it. I was at the hearing in January. My picture right now on Twitter is with me and Kevin from when I went to see him at the courthouse. And he knew about the film and he supported the film. And hopefully we can get that finished. But they held out to the end. There was about 70 comrades that slept in the embassy in the beginning in April. By May, there was only 4 that held out to the end. That was Kevin Ziest, Dr. Margaret Flowers, Adrian Pine, and David Paul. And those are the people I want to make the film about, especially Kevin, and honor him. But we had setbacks. We had COVID. We almost had it done. We had a couple trailers out. But I would honestly think that Kevin, he was probably most proud of what he did last year at the embassy. And I want to honor him. I went there to support him. I knew that they could have given their lives. They were under siege for almost 40 days. No food, no water, electricity cut off. Almost every time we tried to bring food or supplies, we were beaten, arrested. There's plenty of footage of that we're going to expose. I was on the front lines with them and calling out to Kevin and giving him my love and my respect. And so, yeah, it was a very hard blow. And, he passed away soon after, as I mentioned earlier, Jack Lieberman, another great comrade. And they had met once when Kevin went to South Florida for his tour. But yeah, these legends, these great voices of the left are fading out. And those of us that remain in the fight are being censored, are being persecuted, people like Assange or people in exile like Snowden. We need justice, brother. We need justice. We have to keep up the fight. We can't give up hope.
Wow. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just hope that we can put egos to the side and stop this left cannibalism and stop the canceling and the silencing of voices that are trying to speak out for truth. We have to put egos to the side. We all have egos. We hypocrites deny that, say we have no ego. That's part of being human. But we have to put them to the side to work on the projects that we're working on for the greater good, something that's larger than ourselves, for the eternal cause, for the cause that we're striving for, towards a revolutionary change for future generations and for the very survival of humanity. Once we put those egos to the side, we can work on projects together. We can finish films. We can maintain legacies. And we can make sure that all the sacrifices of all our comrades will not be in vain.
I think it's a great way to end it. Thanks for being with me.